How's it going, guys? Shizukat's here. So today I'm going to be kicking off a multi-video series that will hopefully clarify any questions that you guys have regarding the Octopath CotC closed beta, as well as giving some information on what you can expect from the full release. For those of you who are new to the channel, I am a JP CotC player with over 700 hours in the game, and I'm completely free to play the entire way. So hopefully I can give you a pretty good idea of how you can tackle the game as a free-to-play player. To take an in-depth look at the closed beta and familiarize myself with what the English full release might have immediately compared to JP, I'm going to be going into the closed beta myself and hopefully along the way answering any questions that you guys might have. So today we're just going to be going straight into a brand new account. Gonna get that terms of service out of the way. Alright, so now we're going to get right into our first gacha roll. This is always a 5-star unit on the closed beta between one of the 8 initial 5-star units, but on JP, you had a chance to get a 5-star, otherwise it was guaranteed to be at least a 4-star. I don't know how it's going to be on English, but at least for beta, we will be getting a guaranteed 5-star out of this. Now, if we look at the ring, it is glowing yellow. So the rarity that you can expect from a roll depends on the color of the aura that the ring is exuding. So if you have this golden aura, that means you're guaranteed to have a 5-star somewhere in the roll. Now, that being said, when you click on the ring, the aura has a chance to change compared to what it was before you touched it. So even if you don't see this yellow aura before touching the ring, if it changes to a bright yellow aura after touching it, then you could still get a 5-star. Seems like we got Teo as our initial 5-star. Teo is a really great 5-star with his ability to cast regen healing across the entire team. So quite happy about that. Alright, so after completing the opening tutorials, the movement and battle tutorials, we are given our first choice of the game. This choice between the 3 major influences of the game, wealth, power, and fame, is basically to determine the town you start in, as well as which chapter 1 you're going to begin with. This decision doesn't actually mean a whole lot because you will still be able to travel to the other 2 locations, which are all very near to each other. So those 3 starting locations, as well as the chapter 1s that are associated with them, are Valore in the Woodlands, where you will do the Master of Wealth chapter 1, a story featuring Herminia, the Witch of Greed. The second town in the middle is Emberglow in the Frostlands, and that is for Master of Power chapter 1, a story which features Tytos, the general. And the final of the 3 starting towns that you have to choose is Theotopolis in the Flatlands, which features Master of Fame or Master of Glory chapter 1, and the featured villain of that arc is Auguste, the playwright. So for the purposes of the tutorial video, I'm going to be choosing Fame, and we're going to be starting in Theotopolis with Master of Fame chapter 1 with Auguste. Alright, so after choosing our path, we will begin our adventure in the tavern in Theotopolis. And it is here that we are going to get our first few characters that are added to our roster. Those 3 characters are always going to be the same 3. We're going to get Nana, the warrior, 3-star, Jose, the 3-star cleric, and Connie, the 3-star merchant. And with that, our starting roster will be complete with our first 4 units. So here we have the 3 predetermined travelers. We have Nana on the left, Connie in the middle, and Jose on the right. And so as I mentioned earlier, the ring that shows up, the aura that displays on screen is basically a way to tell what rarities you can expect out of the roll. So this is what a 3-star roll looks like. And then we're going to just get our first 3 characters. And whenever you get new characters, you do also get influence points. Each of the characters in the game is associated with one of the 3 influences: wealth, power, and fame. And you can increase the influence that each character is worth by leveling them up and advancing their skill board. But this is something that we're going to come back to in a future video. So after recruiting new characters, you will be introduced with this short scene of them introducing themselves, but each character also has their own traveler stories that you can read later on that goes in a little bit more detail about each of their individual backgrounds. Okay, now that we are officially out of the tutorial, we now have the option to move around and talk to people and look at the menu and things like that. So the first thing that we see as soon as we have free movement is there are 2 NPCs with talk bubbles above their heads. One is red and one is blue. In addition, we have the Tavern Master. But we'll come back to the Tavern Master in a sec. So first things first, let's address what these talk bubbles are. So when you talk to an NPC, you do so by clicking the bubble above their head. And we have the path action tutorial. I'm just going to give you guys the short version. So when you talk to an NPC, if you look in the bottom right corner, you will see their path action details. So each of these icons has a piece of information associated with it. So first, let's take a look at the button itself. So because this NPC had a blue talk bubble, their path action is Inquire, which is associated with fame. Obviously, you can tell because they're both blue. So if we were to hit this blue button, it brings up their path action menu. For every NPC, there are 2 types of path actions that you can do. The top option, the top option, Entreat in this case, allows us to potentially get some items from there. And as you can see, this has a 60% success rate. The success rates of getting these items will differ depending on what the items are, how high the influence level of the NPC is, etc. So, in any case, we're going to try to get this item off him, this Beast Tusk. And we got it. And we're just getting all of them. Alright, so if we see here, on the screen, you see it says, your reputation will suffer if you fail. And I would actually like to fail this just so I can show you guys an example of like what that means for you. But, alas, we did just get all of the items. Alright, so when you get items from NPCs, for the most part, these are one-time deals. So you can no longer get these items from this NPC. Moving on to the second option, we have Invite. And so this is basically the same as like Ophelia's path action from the original Octopath, where she recruits NPCs to take into battle and potentially use the summon command with them. And so in the same way, Entreat is kind of like Steal from Therion's path action, where you can get items for free, but there is a chance that you fail. Now with the Invite option, this also has a chance to fail. So in this case, we have a 50% chance for it to succeed and bring him along, and 50% chance to fail. And this shows the details of what would happen if we were to call him into battle. He will have a chance to inflict an enemy with the bleeding debuff, which is a damage over time debuff. We'll go ahead and just try to bring him along. And we failed. Okay, so your reputation does not carry over between each town. So in this case, our reputation just fell from 5 out of 5 to 4 out of 5. The reputation will restore by 1 at every daily reset, but if it falls to 0, you are not allowed to interact with any NPCs for their path actions unless you go to the tavern and fix your reputation. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that means by talking to the Tavern Master. So the Tavern Master has multiple options. In this case, only 2 options. So the first one is Restore Reputation. So when your reputation hits 0, You can restore it by either waiting until daily reset, in which case it will go up by 1, or you can go to the Tavern Master, in which case you must pay him a fee of money, and he will restore your reputation back to 5 out of 5. Now, do note that the more times you want to restore your reputation in a single day, it's going to cost progressively more and more money. So, just don't miss. And the other option, of course, we can change the name of our account. The name of the account doesn't actually mean anything, really, because there isn't really any interaction with other players. This is basically a completely single-player game. So one more thing I want to look at before we leave this NPC. So if we look in the bottom right corner, the icons have changed. The 4 bag icons that were just white before are now grayed out, and they have check marks on top of them. And this means that we have acquired those items successfully. Additionally, if we try to recruit him... Alright, so we have recruited the old man. And if we take a look at the path action menu once again, we can see that the person icon in the top left now is also grayed out and has a check mark on top of it. And this means that we have successfully recruited him and we can bring him along. So let's take a look at the party. So the one thing I want to take a look at here is the Allies button. When you click the Allies button, you can see all of the NPCs that you have brought along with you. In this case, we can bring a total of 2 NPCs with us, but that number will constantly go up as you progress throughout the game. And if we read the NPC details in the top right corner, it says uses 4 out of 4. What this means is that we can summon him 4 separate times into battle, after which point he will return back to his spot on the map, back here in the tavern, and we can come back here and we can attempt to recruit him again. And one last detail for the NPC menu that I want to look at. So if we read the button, it says Inquire Rank 1. And so what that means is that we need to have glory or fame or glory, whichever one you want to call it. We need to have that rank 1 in order to interact with this NPC with path actions. So eventually, as you go on to various future towns, the required influence level will go up. And so in order to talk to those NPCs, you will need to raise your influence level either by leveling up the units that you have, or recruiting new units, or doing achievements. So now we can go over to this other NPC. As you can see, her button is red. And so red corresponds to power. And for power, these path actions are basically going to be like Ulbrich or Honnet's path actions from original Octopath, where you fight the NPC in order to either get the items that they're holding or recruit them to your team. So the last NPC type is yellow, which corresponds with wealth. And as you can see, we do not currently have a high enough rank in wealth to interact with this NPC, indicated in the bottom right corner by the button not being lit up. It says we need a wealth influence rank of 3 in order to talk to this NPC. So maybe we can go find an NPC who has a lower level so we can interact with him. So here we have one more NPC that we can talk to for the third influence that we have not yet covered. In this case, wealth. And so, wealth, basically this follows Tressa's path action from the first game, which is you can purchase items from the various NPCs, and there are always going to be 2 options for purchasing these items. You can either buy them at the listed price, which in this case is 14 leaves, or you can try to haggle and buy the item at a lower price. And just as with all the other path actions, if you choose this option, you do have a chance to fail, and failing the path action will lower your reputation, which can eventually be restored at the tavern. Now, when we talked to the girl with the red influence, the power influence in the tavern, you did see that a collection point was unlocked. And so collection points are these little blue dots on the map, and we can walk over to it, interact with it, and this gives us a free item. And these collection points will respawn every 20 hours, or sometimes 10 hours. It depends on which collection points. But you can, if you want, you can come back here every 20 hours, pick up a new item. Now, if we take a look at the minimap, the areas of the minimap that we have walked on are in light gray, while the areas that we have not are in dark gray. So what I like to do whenever I unlock any new area is I just like to, this is kind of a force of habit, but I just like to walk on every available piece of the map just so I can light it all up. We'll go ahead and grab this treasure chest. And the reason I like to do this is because of the easiest way to move being clicking the minimap and then clicking the location that you want to go to. And this just allows you to go exactly where you want without having to deal with all the fuss of like swiping on the screen. So let's take a look at the first major building that you will see in basically every town, which is the inn. So in the original Octopath Traveler, the inn price to rest at the inn and restore your HP was based on the levels of the characters in your party. But in COTC, it is always a flat amount. So we're just going to go ahead and sleep at the inn. Unlocks ourselves an achievement. Let's go ahead and go upstairs. Sometimes you will see an NPC up here, or sometimes a treasure chest. So we'll go ahead and grab this treasure chest. And we got a bronze spear. Cool. So we will come back to that in a future video when we talk about weapons. And we will also come back to this building in a future video as well. This is the blacksmith, or the weapon shop, or the equipment shop basically. This is where you're going to be getting new gear. Alright, so the last thing that I want to address in this video is rubies, ruby yield, login bonus, and achievements. So if we take a look at the mailbox, we will see that there are no login gems, I guess, on the closed beta, but we do get some stuff from the devs. So we'll go ahead and pick up all of this. Nice, so we get 325 rubies, more than enough for a single 10 roll, as well as 3 Traveler's Sacred Seals. So these are basically single roll tickets, and I'll go into more detail on those in part 2, where we talk about Gacha, rates, and other things like that. So the last thing that I want to look at in this video is the achievement menu. So when we click on the achievement menu, or the Feats menu in English, we will see all of the available achievements. So if we look over here on the left, there are 3 different categories. There are dailies, weeklies, and novice is basically first time achievements. So first time you stay in an inn, first time you do a path action, first time you recruit an ally with a path action, things like that. You can get some single roll tickets, you can get some extra rubies, things like that. There's quite a lot of stuff that you can get, but that's just for first time stuff. For dailies, the main thing that we want to look at here, of course, are the rubies. So by completing 9 daily tasks, you can get 5 rubies every day. By completing your weekly tasks, you can get 20 here, and you can get 10 here by completing 30 dailies within a week. Now, I currently do not know what day or time the daily or weekly resets are, so if I acquire that information, I'll be sure to post that information somewhere, whether it's in like the pinned comments or something, but I do not currently have access to that information. Now, as far as the second tab at the top, these are achievements for things like beating chapter stories, beating a certain number of enemies, beating a certain number of certain types of enemies, and you can clear these achievements to get not only rubies, but also points to your influences. So if we go back to the menu, if we hit the influence button, we have our 3 influences, and they each have basically their own EXP bar. And you can gain additional influence by, as I said earlier, by completing achievements, as well as recruiting new characters and leveling up your characters. And so every time you fill up the bar, that influence will increase to the next level. You'll get a small amount of rewards, and you'll also gain access to interacting with more NPCs based on your influence level and things like that. All right, so next let's go ahead and take a look at the menu. So there's a lot of potential information here, and obviously if we hit the menu button, it opens up a whole bunch of other buttons. So we'll come back to those, and instead we're going to look at these first ones here. So if we hit the party button, it brings us to our party, and you can have up to 10 different parties at once, indicated by the dots at the bottom. So if we shift through each of the parties, the dots at the bottom will let you know which party you're currently on. The parties can be renamed by hitting this button here in the top left, and these buttons in the top right. So the display button allows you to cycle through the various information, such as the stats, the influences, the skill sets of your characters, while the formation button, if you click this one, allows you to change the position of your party members as you wish. You can also put some units in the back line. I believe there was actually an achievement for that. Maybe that was go into battle with backline. Alright, next up we have the equipment menu. This is where you can equip various pieces of equipment. A character can have 5 pieces of equipment equipped at a time, which are their weapon, their headpiece, their body armor, and 2 accessory slots. And so over time you will be able to get more pieces of equipment to equip to your character, but we're going to be doing a more in-depth look at equipment in a future video. Sorry about that. Hit the X button by mistake. Next up we have the set skills. Characters start with 2 skills by default, but they can equip up to 3 skills on their kit at any time. And the rest of their kit can be unlocked by leveling them up, gaining job points, and going into their skill grid, which we cannot do yet, but we will also be coming back to this in a future video. Learn skills is where you have access to the character's skill grid, which we'll come back to later. And finally, we have the status screen. So by clicking on a character, you can bring up their full stats. Here you can take a look at all of their statistics all at once. In the bottom left corner, if we look at the story section, you'll see that all of the things here, the intro 1, 2, 3, are grayed out. And so these are the traveler stories associated with the character. Once you have read the stories, these icons will be lit up, and additionally, doing those traveler stories will give you various rewards such as rubies, influence points, as well as giving you some extra guide stones for that character. So, speaking of guide stones, let's take a quick look at these 2 buttons in the bottom left, or bottom right corner, rather. We have first Limit Break. So Limit Break allows you to increase the level cap of a character. So depending on the character's rarity, they will have a different level cap. So 5-star characters will have a default cap of 80, and it can go all the way up to 100. So in order to increase a character's level, you have to consume guide stones, and the higher the level gets, the more guide stones it will require. So the first 3 levels require 20 guide stones apiece. The next 3 levels require 40 apiece. The next 3 levels require 60 apiece, and so on. And to get a character all the way up to level 100, it requires a grand total of 2,000 guide stones. And right now, I believe the only way to get guide stones in the closed beta is to pull dupes of a character or to read traveler stories. But there is a way to get some constant income of guide stones that is not currently in the closed beta, which is called subjugation hunts or subjugation missions. I'm not sure what they're going to end up calling it in English, as they're not currently in the game yet, but yeah, so there will be a way to get a steady income of these guide stones later on with the full release. The other button is Awakening, and so this is basically the dupes system in the game. If any of you have ever played Genshin Impact, this is just like Constellations. So whenever you pull a dupe of a character, you will get whenever you get a dupe of a 5-star character, you will get an Awakening Stone. And you can consume these Awakening Stones to gain these awakening levels, which are indicated by this 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so these have various permanent benefits on the characters. So the first awakening will get you a permanent increase of plus 30% to all of that character's physical defense, physical attack and defense, magic attack and defense, crit, and speed stats, up to a maximum of 50. Now, one thing to note is that 30% bonus does not apply any boosts that are gained from their skill page. So all of these statistics, like this, like plus 20 HP, plus 5 strength, plus 5 defense, things like that, none of these statistics are affected by these awakening bonuses. It will only apply to whatever the base statistics are based on whatever level they're at. At level 2, you gain access to an extra skill slot, giving your character a total of 4. At Awakening 3, you get 50% bonus HP up to a maximum of 1000. Again, this does not apply to any of the bonuses gained through the skill board. This only applies to the bonuses from the character's base stats. And finally, we have Awakening 4, which is currently not available in the English version in closed beta. This is available in JP though. Not on every character. They actually introduce these Awakening 4 accessories over time, staggering them across several characters. And these Awakening 4 accessories are extremely strong. Like, I'm talking like 140 combined worth of stats, and then also some extra passives as well. So these are extremely strong accessories. They're also not exclusive to the character that unlocked them. They can be equipped to any character. So there are going to be some pretty neat mix and match combinations. But again, this is far off into the future of the game, and we don't need to worry about this for right now. Lastly, we have the Travelers list. This is where you can take a look at the full roster. You can sort and filter by various criteria. Like if you want to filter to just a single job. If you want to look at characters sorted based by their stats, like say you want to see the characters with the highest attack stats, you can sort it that way. You can look at all their information at once. And then lastly, we have the Allies button, which we looked at earlier, which allows you to look at which NPCs you brought along with you. Next up, we have the quest menu. This is where you can see all of the quests you have available. So currently, we have the main story, which is Master of Fame 1. Side story, I currently do not have any unlocked, but these are basically just like, side missions, such as the Nameless Town, which we will unlock at a later point. And Traveler stories, which are the ones for each character that introduce a little bit of their backstory. I believe we need to wait until we've completed Master of Fame Chapter 1 in order to unlock some Traveler stories, so we'll come back to this later on, but this is where you can find out where all the Traveler stories are. One more thing about the quest is that at one time you can have one quest being your priority quest. And when you have a quest prioritized, it will show you exactly where you need to go on the minimap. So in this case, we have this blinking blue light at the top of our map. That's showing us where we need to go for the current quest. The hints menu, this is just any information that you might need to look at. Alright guys, so I had to play a little bit. Specifically, I had to complete Master of Fame Chapter 1 in order to unlock the last two options on the main menu. And now we can go over those. So those two extra options are Memoirs and World Map. So Memoirs is a feature that actually was not available in the JP version until 5 or 6 months down the line. But this is known to JP players as the Book of Recollections. Basically, this menu is where you can read certain like side stories as well as complete certain battles. There will eventually be a lot more stuff in here, such as refights as well, where you can refight against certain major bosses as well as refight against the arena champions. So obviously there's only one thing in here right now, which is Memoirs of a Kate Scholar, but there will eventually be a lot more stuff in this menu down the line. And the other new option is the world map. So just like in the original Octopath Traveler, accessing the world map allows you to fast travel between locations that you've already visited. But there are some details that you will want to be able to read on this world map menu. So if we take a look at the right side, after clicking on or I guess it's Theatropolis in the English version, not Theatopolis, but if we take a look at the right side, we have a lot of details here, so you will be able to see which quests you have available between the main story, traveler stories, and side story. So in this case, we do not have any main story chapters to complete here, but we do have 3 traveler stories, all of which are in the Wealth Influence, and we have 1 side story, which is the Nameless Town side quest that I have not started yet. In addition, you have this bottom section, People Interacted With. So this lets you determine how many of the NPCs in that town you have already successfully interacted with. And if you are unable to interact with an NPC due to not having a high enough influence, so for example, we don't have high enough influence to talk to this guy right here, then that NPC does not contribute to this count. But additionally, earlier on in the video, we did tell you about certain NPCs that have a level 1 out of 2 indicator in the bottom right, and so if we click on this guy, you will see that there's a third option in the bottom right corner now, below Entreat and Invite, which is Inquire Further, and it says we need Fame rank 3 or more, and then once we do, this button will light up, and we can hit the button to unlock more items that we can potentially get from this guy, as well as strengthening his summon if we were to recruit him and bring him into battle. So if you look at his possessions in the bottom left, he has a Bronze Spear, Bronze Helm, and Experience Nut, and 2 that are just 3 question marks. So those 2 will be unlocked once we inquire further. And if we look at the ally skill, you see how it has, in the strength section, it has one thing lit up, but it has 2 that are grayed out. Once we inquire further, that strength will increase to 3. And in the world map, the Inquire Further also contributes to the people interacted with. So by interacting with an NPC for the first time, that will count as 1. And then when they have further information that you can get from them, further items, things like that, that will also contribute towards this people interacted with section. Now, reading the hostile areas works a little bit differently. So these will display the elite enemies within the area, as well as how many treasure chests that you've picked up. Now, the thing is that if you've been to the amphitheater already, you know that there are more than 2 elite enemies in the amphitheater. I think there's actually 3. And so the reason for that is because in this top section, Elite Enemy Info, it will only display elite enemies that are not guarding treasure chests. Whereas the elite enemies that are guarding the treasure chests, they will not appear here. But if you look at the treasure info at the bottom, we've only collected 5 out of the 8 treasure chests in the area. And if you have treasure chests that are not yet collected, chances are they may be hidden behind an elite enemy. And so the reason that this is going to be relevant is that later on there's going to be content that requires you to beat every elite enemy in every area. And a good way to keep track of that is once you've defeated these elite enemies, once you've defeated all of them in a single area, in the top section, those elite enemies will be revealed. And in the bottom area, if you've picked up every single treasure chest, that means that you must have defeated the elite enemies that are guarding those chests. So that's a great way to keep track of which elite enemies you have and have not defeated yet. So yeah, that's basically it for those 2 sections. And now back to what we were talking about earlier. Now let's look at the main menu. So on the far left, we have the guide button, which is basically the gacha roll button. This will take us to the gacha screen, which we'll come back to this in another video. We also have the influence button, which we looked at earlier. This is where you can look at each of your influence ranks as well as how far along you are. The Feats button for the dailies. Next, we have the item menu. This is where you can take a look at all your items. Honestly, you're not going to be coming in here very often, as you don't really need to keep track of all your items that much. Things like weapons and armor, you can keep track of by just going into your character's equipment pages and equipping stuff. Same with accessories. Materials are going to... We're going to talk about that in when we talk about items and shop and blacksmith and whatnot. As far as consumables go, this is basically just going to be EXP nuts, limit break guide stones, and awakening stones. So there's Actually, not a whole lot of reason to come into the items menu. The main reason that you would come in here is probably for fortune boxes, which is basically just like a way to roll for new items. Next, we have the shop button. This is where you go if you want to spend the monies. So you can buy rubies, or you can buy specific packages using paid rubies. This option is not available in the closed beta though, so don't have to worry about that right now. Next up is the exchange, and I think this is one of the least understood parts of the menu, simply because from what people have told me, there's so much stuff missing from this. So first, let's look at guide fragments. Basically, this is where you go after you have rolled on banners. So every time you roll on banners, you get these fragments that can be traded in for stuff. So it's just like sparking in other gacha games. This is where you would go to claim your spark. In this case, after you have rolled 200 times, you have the option to spark, in this case, Millard, because Millard is the featured unit on the current banner. Alternatively, if you do not go all the way to a spark, you do have other options to grab, such as guide stones to level up your character. Boost berry, previously just known as a level up berry on the JP version. This is basically just rare candy from Pokemon, so it increases your character's level by 1. It's recommended to stock these up to use on higher levels, as the amount of EXP that you need to level up will constantly be increasing the higher level you get. And lastly, we have bronze guidestone shards. You're basically never going to be trading for those. The next option in the exchange, we have guidestone shards. This is where you can exchange the various guidestones and guidestone shards for various things. So let's first talk about exchanging shards for guidestones. So you can break guidestones into shards and vice versa. So in this case, if we were to break 1 gold guidestone, we would get, or sorry, we can exchange 20 shards for 1 gold guidestone. Geez, talking is hard. Alternatively, we can, it's not available in the closed beta, but eventually, or maybe it is, we just don't have any yet. Yeah, there we go. So you can actually break guidestones down into shards as well. The main thing that we want to look at in this menu is the silver guidestone shards, specifically these gold holy marks, or these gold sacred seals as they're called in English. So these gold holy marks are what are used to class up a character from 4.5 star to a 5 star, and this is one of the most reliable ways to get these gold holy marks. Otherwise, you basically have to you basically have to luck sack into them. So this is going to be the most reliable way to get these golden sacred seals, and this is probably where you're going to want to be putting your silver guidestone shards as you stock them up. You also have the option to buy the silver seals, the silver holy marks, which are used to upgrade 3.5 star characters to 4 star, but these are going to be a lot easier to get through other means, so I do not recommend buying the silver seals. Instead, saving up for the gold ones, as these ones are much harder to get and are going to be much more impactful. And in the last section of the exchange, we have other. Currently, there is nothing here available for trade, at least for me, but some of the stuff that's going to be available here are things like Nameless Town trade-in. What else is available here? Experience fragments trade-in. Stuff that's going to be available later on, whether through unlocking the Nameless Town or future content updates, but currently we just do not have anything here. Next, of course, we have the news, where you can take a look at all of the latest news, whether it's updates or bug fixes or things like that, upcoming events, upcoming collabs. There aren't a whole lot of those, so don't expect those to be coming too often, but when they do come, they are a pretty big deal. And lastly, we have the mail. Of course, this is where we can pick up all of our mailbox stuff. Figure now's a good time as any to once again talk about dailies, as For whatever reason, I did not get any daily rubies, but now's a good time to talk about how many rubies you can expect to get through daily. So, at least on JP, what we get is every day you log in, you get 10 rubies. Every 10th day you log in, you get 30 rubies instead of 10. And every 100th day you log in, you get 100 rubies. And so this comes out to around, what is it, 270 plus 90, around 360 rubies per month just from logging in. And on top of the rubies that you get from dailies and weeklies, you're averaging around 600 rubies per month on average, in addition to all the other stuff that you do. In the last tab, we have Other. This is where you can look at the settings, game settings. Eventually, there's going to be a button here to bind your account to a Square Enix Bridge account, I believe is what it's called. And that's basically how you're going to secure your account in case like your data gets wiped or something like that. Or you have to like uninstall and reinstall the app so you don't lose your data. So that pretty much covers everything that I want to talk about in this first video. I know I've gone on pretty long. I just want to make sure that all of your guys' questions are answered and that I didn't miss out on any information. So yeah, that'll be it for this video. And in the next video, we'll be talking about the gacha and the rates and things like that. And probably be doing some rolls as well. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye!